Thank you for your teachings.
Thank you for your questions.
I want to ask you about suffering, about the...
We're against it.
So,
Not making fun of it either. It's more of a choice than most people know. We will listen to you. Doesn't seem like a choice, we know, but it is.
what about those young kids? That they suffer? You see them suffering, and they get born with terrible illnesses sometimes. Do they get born with those bad vibrations? Where those terrible vibrations come from?
Well, you know, we've already had a conversation here today that sets us up for an understanding about this. We're happy to have this conversation because when you think about what we were talking about earlier, about knowing if you're in the receiving mode when the impulse comes to do something. Remember that conversation? For example, let's say that you are an adult, as you are, and you've been meditating for 15 or 20 minutes, and when you come out of meditation, you have a really strong impulse to contact someone. And when you do, they just tell you off. They just bawl you out. They just really give you a hard time. And you might ask the question of yourself, why did I call that person? Why did I do that? Where did that impulse come from? And as in our previous discussion, it was because there was something in your vortex that you wanted. And that conversation was the beginning discussion of something that you wanted. And so even though right now, while you're taking a snapshot of the rightness or the wrongness of it, and it feels all wrong, it really was something that was inspired from broader perspective. So we asked and answered a big question today, really for the first time, about how sometimes when you are under the influence of your inner being, that you might be inspired to something that initially looked like it was a bad idea. Like our friend talking about, in more trivial fashion, taking the wrong exit, and then it turning out to be something that led to something that led to something that was really wonderful. So you remember that conversation. So these non-physical energies that are coming forth, do you think when they are still in non-physical that they are in the receiving mode? Every one of them is. Every one of them is under the influence of source energy. And so could anything that they are deciding to do from that point of view be a mistake? Or was it something really deliberately intended for some even greater satisfying reason? That's how it is. Might be hard to hear, but that is how it is.
It is hard to hear.
It's not hard to hear, it's just confusing to hear. It's hard to hear when you have some other flawed premises that you've been operating under, like punishment and things like that.
Well, but suffering is real.
Suffering is real, but have you noticed?
Pain is real.
Say?
Pain is real.
Pain is real. It's also perceptual. Let's talk for just a moment, and we are not wanting to trivialize this again, but Esther, some years ago, was watching something on television that was happening to some people far away. And it was so disturbing to her that she couldn't even stay on her feet. She sat down. It was awful to see. And she said to us, Abraham, if watching this on television hurts me this much, then what must it be like for those who are living it? And we said, well, they're not hurting as much as you are. Because there's a relationship thing, a perceptual thing. Because often when you are in the middle of something, when it is your experience, you're also attracting other resources that someone outside of it isn't attracting. You see what we're getting at? We want you to try to perceive that maybe you're not seeing it exactly as they are. It's a stretch, we know. It's like what you all do when you make a movie about animals and you give them the personalities of people, all the foibles and flawed premises that people have, and you assign those to the language of the animals. It's a little like that. It's just trying to stretch you into accepting what we're saying a little bit. Is that as humans, you sometimes take worst case scenario and then you lay it over the top of what somebody else thinks when they're not thinking that at all. The hardest thing in the world is to watch someone else, especially someone you care about, having experiences over which you have no control, that you would give everything that you could if you could control. This is really an extreme conversation about how you don't create others' reality, and it's hard to accept that they would either. I wouldn't do that to myself. This law of attraction thing can't be real, and it must not be true, Abraham, that I create my own reality, because I would not have created this. And we say there are two factors and two factors only that we want you to consider. Sometimes we say, we didn't say you created it on purpose, we did say you created it. But in the case of someone who comes this way, they did create it on purpose. There's a path of least resistance that they are looking forward to demonstrating or experiencing. Every time, no exceptions.
Every time. So this little kid that was born with this genetical degenerative disease, and instead of growing, just got ungrowing and getting worse and worse and worse.
And from non-physical perspective, said something like, I'll go forth and I will not be like everyone else. I'll be not normal. I will not be one of those who lives things in such a satisfying way that anyone who beholds me just feels satisfied. I will not be a perpetuator of conditional love or conditional connection. I will be one who is different, and if people are going to find connection with their source, they're going to have to find it without me performing in some way that makes it easier for them. And I will specifically choose, I have agreements, because this is the thing that keeps humans in mass from living happily ever after, or even happily hardly at all. Most humans are living so conditionally that when just a little condition gets out of whack, they freak out and use that as their excuse to hold off. And then, even more, they become very commanding and demanding of others to behave just like they need them to behave in order for them to feel good. So society as a whole begins to move towards satisfying the weakness in others' inability to align and to direct and to deliberately create. And sometimes energies come forth saying, I'm not going to play that game anymore. I'm going to be different. And those who love me and who are with me are going to have to find their happiness outside of my offering of my condition. Is the suffering physical only, or is it emotional? Is it more with the child than it is with those around the child? Is anyone suffering as much as you are? Does any of this make sense? Well, we know it makes sense to you. Does any of this make sense to you? In other words, can you step back far enough from it to... Do you understand the enormous problem with humanity that we have just sort of expressed here, that humans are squandering their ability to live happily over things that just don't matter at all, and that perpetuation becomes more and more and more. So more and more energies are coming forth, choosing different ways to be different in order to give you an opportunity to find a way to alignment anyway.
I'm going to have to digest that.
It'll help you when you do.
Thank you.
It'll also help you when you realize it was an agreement that you made before any of you came in from non-physical into physical. And therefore it's not something that went wrong, it's something that's going really right, sort of according to plans, really according to plans. We intended this, we wanted this because we wanted to know what we know as a result of this. And we know, when you are in your physical form, it's like sometimes someone makes their transition sooner than those around them would like them to. And then we talk about how beneficial that is, and the audience all seizes up because they don't want someone that they care about to teach them that lesson in that way. It's not about teaching a lesson, it's about coming into your own power. It's about finding your own alignment anyway. It's about finding confidence and belief and faith even without the evidence that most everyone else would need to support that.